I'm ready when you are. A little Jewish boy grows up in Nazi Germany. Auschwitz is one of the only memories that he has. But the memories that he does have of the life before Auschwitz, they're beautiful. He remembers his family, he remembers the laughter, he remembers a time that was free from oppression. But he was too young to remember America's role in the world at that time. But he did remember this. Those in his camp who were old enough to understand, their biggest fear was not what would happen to them. It was not death, it was not being hurt. Their biggest fear was that America knew. America knew about the concentration camps. America knew about the horrors that are happening inside of them, and yet they did nothing. Now, that little boy grew up to be a general in the American military. He grew up to be a general in the military that freed him. But what he realized later is that America did know. America knew about the concentration camps long before they entered the war. So why didn't we do anything about it? We've always been known as a country of the free. We've always been known for doing what is right over what was popular, and yet when we know that people are dying, innocent people are dying in the hands of the force of Nazism, we did nothing. Why? Now, I believe that the answer to that comes in political polarization, one of the biggest problems in all of American history. So when asked the question, has America always faced irreconcilable political polarization, I don't think there's an easy answer. Now, most part, I would say yes. But there are a few exceptions which I'll go on to in my speech. The first is George Washington's presidency. And the second exception to this question is that yes, we face political polarization, but no, it is not irreconcilable. So I'd like to go into my points today. My first is that the media has corrupted Americans. My second is that the pride in America, the lack of it, is devastating to our country. My third is that this threatens our world position, and my fourth is a solution. But before I go into all of that, I'd like to explain the exception of George Washington. George Washington is one of the most beloved presidents in all of human history. We all know him as a great man. He gave up the presidency after 2 terms, even though he had easily taken the third. At the end of his presidency, 1797, he issued a farewell address to the Americans that he served, and he warned them of many things, but the one thing that he stressed to them was not to fall into the trap of a 2-party system. He warned that if they did, then they would value partisanship over progress. We now live in that America. And just as pro is the opposite of con, progress has become the opposite of Congress. We live in the America that he feared, but under his presidency, polarization was very little. There was none. Yet it took less than a year for us to forget his lessons. Now, in America, we have a certain way of electing the president and vice president. The president runs with a vice presidential mate, and so that when the president is elected, his mate becomes his vice president. And the reason why that is because the very election after President Washington gave his farewell address and warned against polarization, there was a rule that the first place winner would get the presidency and the second place winner would get the vice presidency. And so we ended up with a Democratic Republican and a Federalist in the office. And they were so polarized that they couldn't work together. And so we had to create an entire new rule that said that the person who was running for the president had to choose a vice president. It took less than a year to forget George Washington's words, urging us against the political polarization. But how has that applied since then? Now, my first point is that media has corrupted Americans. According to the Pew Research Center in 2012, 71% of MSNBC reports regarding Romney in the 2012 elections were negative, while only 3% displayed him as positive. Similarly, in Fox News, regarding Barack Obama, 46% of reports regarding Barack Obama were negative, while only 6% was positive. Now, the reason that this is important is because we chose, as Americans, to put the freedom of the press in the Constitution. That way, we could allow for a more informed America, and yes, a less polarized America. Because people would know the whole sides of the issues. They would know all the details, and they could vote accordingly. But obviously, that's not happening. With polarized news sources comes a polarized America because they trust what they see on MSNBC or Fox News more than what is the right thing to do. And this has led to great harm to our country. But something else has led to a great harm to our country. And that leads me directly to my second point, that the lack of involvement in America has led to further polarization. Now, 2/5 of Americans who are eligible to vote do not do so. We live in one of the exceptions in all of human history that allows all people, regardless of race, religion, or gender, to cast a ballot. Yet an increasing number of people do not do so. And they do not do so because of the climate of polarization. They have more pride in their party than they have in their country. Now, I don't know if any of you watched the Republican National Convention this summer. There were a lot of polarized messages and a lot of patriotic messages. But my favorite message from the entire convention came from Senator Marco Rubio. Now, Senator Marco Rubio's parents had immigrated to the United States with him from Cuba when he was just a little boy. His grandpas had sometimes visited him. And he said, "I don't remember everything he told me, but the one thing that I remember is the one thing he wanted me never to forget. That the dreams he had when he was a kid became impossible for him. But I could do anything I wanted, because I was an American." We can all relate to this sense of American pride. We have pride in our country, but that pride in our country is quickly being replaced with pride in our party, and it will lead to the downfall of America as we know it. Which leads me directly into my third point, that America's world standing is at risk because of this polarization. Now let me explain why this is important. Over the past 2 years, 19 different countries have utilized the Arab Spring tactic as a way to install democracies into their own countries. But why did they do this? More people in the world live under a communist society than they live under a democratic society. So why did they choose democracy instead of communism? And the answer to this question is America, and the example that it sets. It has always set the example for doing what is right over what is popular. But when polarization becomes the trend in Congress, we lose that standing in the world. And in doing so, an entire world loses faith in democracy. The next time they try to convert to their government, they're going to convert to communism, because China and Russia are going to do better than us. So we need to get rid of the polarization that's happening with the government and leave generations to come all across the world to benefit.